Welcome back to another episode of the Extra Literary Affairs podcast. Today, Joey and I will be having an affair with Sayaka Murata and her novella, Convenience Store Woman. Before we get started, I'd love to give a short summary of Convenience Store Woman. It is a quietly subversive novella about Kiko Furukawa, a 36-year-old woman who has been working at the same Tokyo convenience store for the last 18 years. Socially unconventional and emotionally detached, Kyoko finds comfort in the store's rigid routines and scripted interactions. The job gives her a sense of identity and purpose that she struggles to find elsewhere in her life. However, pressure from family and society to conform, to marry, to pursue a real career leads her to a bizarre arrangement with a disgruntled former co-worker. As she tries to meet expectations, Kyoko begins to question whether abandoning her carefully constructed life is worth the cost to fit in. The novella is a sharp, darkly funny exploration of individuality, societal norms, and the quiet rebellion of choosing your own path. Joey, do you have anything else you'd like to add to that summary before we do a bit of brief background about the author?
No, I think that's a good summary for this novella.
Excellent. Joey, can I ask you one question though before we do jump into the information about the author's bio? What brought you to this novella? This was something you have asked us to read multiple times over many months, and we just finally were able to do that. And I'm really curious of what made you want to read this?
It used to be one of my favorite books. I'm not saying it's not anymore, but I've read a lot more books, and so I think it's still a great book, but it's not one of my all-time favorites anymore, but it's still very well done. And I think the reason why I wanted to read it is I think it's very relevant still. It was only written in, I think, 2016 is the original Japanese, and then it was translated in 2018, I think. I might have that wrong, but so it's not that old yet, and I just really loved all the themes and how the author explores all of those ideas and how she created such a complicated and nuanced main character, our protagonist. And I just really like her as a character, and I think she was really interesting as a character study and everything that just happens. Obviously, we're going to discuss all of that, but I think it's a really good one, and it's very popular. I think it resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah, Joey, thank you for insisting that we read this story, and it has really opened my eyes up to a lot of issues and put a very fine point on some societal issues that, in looking back on 2016 when she wrote this, 2018 when it possibly was translated for the first time into English, sadly are still very relevant today. So thank you for mentioning that. So who is this author, and where did this novella come from? So I'd like to say that Sayaka Murata is a celebrated Japanese author known for her provocative, genre-blurring fiction that challenges societal norms and explores the boundaries of identity, gender, and conformity. Her writing often blends the surreal with the mundane, creating unsettling yet deeply human stories that question what it means to be normal. Born in 1979 in Japan, she began writing at a very young age and worked part-time in a Tokyo convenience store for 18 years, a job that directly inspired her breakout novel, Convenience Store Woman, which we are discussing today. Other notable works include Earthlings, which came out in 2018, and Life Ceremony in 2022, both of which push even further into the bizarre and taboo to examine alienation, ritual, and the human body. Spicy topics for sure. Murata's style is often described as clinical yet emotionally piercing, and she's been praised for her ability to make readers question deeply ingrained cultural assumptions. Her work has won numerous awards, including 2 major Japanese literary awards, which are both prestigious but have very different vibes. She won the Akutagawa Prize that recognizes literary fiction by emerging and relatively unknown authors, such as herself, and the Mishima Yukio Prize that celebrates experimental, avant-garde, or controversial literature. And I think this novella neatly caps both of those categories. Murata has become a literary force for readers drawn to fiction that's both disquieting and deeply introspective. So, Joey, had you had any previous exposure to this author and her work? She also has some short story collections, but I think this is definitely the first time that I've been introduced to this author.
I have her short story collection, Life Ceremonies. I have not read it yet, so maybe I'll read some of those stories and see if we will end up discussing them. But I have not read Earthlings before. It's on my radar. I do know that it exists, but there's like something in it that I don't want to read about, and it's sexual assault a sexual assault against a child, and I don't want to read about that for obvious reasons.
Hard pass.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm sure it's great. Yeah, knowing that about it, I'm kind of like, ugh, if I know it's gonna happen in the story, it kind of puts me off. But I'm sure it's fantastic, and I'm sure I would really enjoy it if I liked it, minus that bit. Yes, I've not read anything else by her yet.
Great, Joey. I will have to agree with you. I think that particular topic, although probably very important to be discussed, is perhaps not something that you nor I would like to discuss in this format. So I think that's going to be a hard pass on Earthlings.
Yeah, I would probably read it, but I probably wouldn't want to discuss it because that's very hard. That's a sensitive topic, especially someone that in their lived experience, unfortunately, then that would be very triggering, obviously. Not for me.
Totally agree with you, Joey. So you had given us a little bit of information about your first impressions of this novella, but I would like to hear more about that because I was just fascinated by all the parts of the story.
Yeah, well, it's not my first impression. First impression now, I guess, since I've now reread it. But I really enjoyed this sort of existential question of, like, what does it mean to be successful? And I mentioned that in another episode that we were talking about this, or maybe it was a wrap-up or something. It was probably our June wrap-up. Because that's what I think that's part of what's at the heart of this story is, what does it mean for the protagonist to be successful? And what does it mean for society? What does success look like at a societal level, and who gets to define that? Do we have to engage with what society deems us as financially successful? Do we have to be married and have children? I mean, that is, of course, the tradition of how society views it. And I think what's so fascinating is that this crosses cultural divides. We're from the United States. You could tell by American accents. Even though we have a lot of listeners from all over the world, it's so interesting that this is a commonality between so many different types of cultures and so vastly different geographical locations and in different time periods as well. So it's a fascinating question to ponder, like, what does it mean to be normal, which you were saying is part of what the author Murata explores in her body of work so far. Keiko is constantly trying to figure out how to pass as normal, and she's like masking to try and figure out how to do that successfully, just to be left alone and just to be like, I want to live as a convenience store woman and work part-time and like sacrifice my body to the convenience store, which seems very strange, but I mean, we're going to get into it. But anyway, I really love that question. I think we've come up with a similar theme in some other stories, especially like The Hollow, where what is a house? And so I really like to ponder these philosophical questions because it's so subjective. It's just, who are you and where are you at?
Joey, thank you for saying that, because my initial reading, read it twice, and I also listened to the audiobook. And it has been so interesting for me to think, oh, this is a pretty straightforward, uncomplicated story. And then sitting with it and writing down some of the topics that came up, I'm like, I'm going to need more paper, because it does talk about a person's worth. How do you pass as a potentially neurodivergent person in a society that has very rigid expectations for you? What does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a coworker? What is a job for? Are others allowed to make comments about your lifestyle choices and make you feel badly about them? Like, who said that was okay? And why does that keep happening? And I think the author did such a artful job of cranking up the empathy, for me at least, by having us in the mind of Keiko, saying, I did some really what I thought were normal things as a child, that people were horrified with my lack of empathy and understanding of how the human condition worked. And she learned to just keep her mouth shut. And at one point in the novella, she says, well, that worked as a kid. I just didn't say anything outside my home because then nobody could be upset. But then she's like, oh, as I got older, not saying anything to anyone now turned into a problem. And now they think I need therapy. I need to get cured. And so I just thought that was an interesting, as a person who represents herself as a neurotypical person, I think it was a very good firsthand account for me to say, wow, if you had to question every day in every interaction with a stranger, am I doing this right? Do I give off the wrong vibe? I don't know why people said I couldn't eat a bird when it was dead. The bird was dead. We eat dead birds. Why is everybody getting all worried about me saying this? As a child, she said that. I think it was really helpful for me to understand some of the challenges that I've obviously heard about from others, but I couldn't internalize them until I really dove into this character.
Yeah, I think that we learn about that story of when she's at the park with her mom and she finds a dead bird and she thinks, let me take this back home and cook it for my dad because he likes a certain dish that involves probably chicken. So her mind is like, oh, like this is probably not even enough to like feed my family. So like we're gonna have to go kill some more birds. And her mother and the people of the park are obviously appalled because they don't understand, like, why are you not upset about this dead bird? Why we want to bury it, we don't want to eat it. And she's like, that makes no sense. That's like wasteful, and it's just a bird. So I don't feel bad for a bird. And I think I don't want to psychoanalyze, even though I still like doing it, but I think like I'm not the right person for this. Like, I agree she's neurodivergent for sure. Whether she's on like the autism spectrum or something, I'm not sure. Refer to an expert if you would like that. But I think it's so interesting to get in a perspective where someone does have to mask their emotions and how they present themselves in the world, because as you said, she uses silence to blend in, which is always her ultimate goal here throughout the novella. And so it's really interesting that we get this early incident and then there's also some incidents at school where she is kind of violent and she pulls her teacher's skirt and underwear down to stop her crying. And it's so fascinating to see, like, explore the logic behind those decisions, because there is logic. She's not just doing it because she just doesn't understand how the world works. She's like, you were crying. I saw this on TV, that this solved the issue. You know, it's just like, I know my dad likes this dish. I'm going to I want to make him happy. So I'm going to give the thing to him that makes him happy. And so it's just like, is it wrong then? I mean, obviously, if I also think I'm neurotypical, so I can't really relate to that type of thinking, but I really appreciate that was a part of the story, and it was just extremely well done, I thought.
Yeah, I agree with you, Joey. And one of the things that was interesting, because as you said, she had very logical reasons for why she was doing it. And I think sometimes we talk about like using language in a different way. And if I say a certain word to you, you may have a different association. And so in these social settings, she's like, which one of these variations am I supposed to do right now? Sometimes it's okay to be violent. Sometimes it's not okay to be violent. Sometimes it's okay to eat animals. Sometimes it is not okay to eat animals. Like, as the character, she's like, I just don't know which rules apply. Is there a guidebook for life? Like, how do I know what to do when? And she, in the book, and the reason I bring this up is that very much in the novella, she talks about, I just want to know how to be normal. And one of the things that she really appreciated about working in the convenience store is that there was a training session. And they're like, we all have the same rules. We do this. If a customer does this, you do that. And she's like, oh, well, I'm very good at mimicking. I'm very good at reciting the script that you have told me. And her very first day on the job, it was a very interesting scene where someone asks her a question and she's like, okay, I'm going to say something really awkward. And she said something really awkward because she's like, I'm not good answering questions that are not ones that we've already rehearsed. And Joe, you can probably back me up on this. I think we were born talkers. I think it's very easy for us to find the words generally and kind of flow. And it was just a very interesting perspective to care about this character and to really see her struggle and to understand that she also doesn't seem to express a huge range of emotions, that it feels like her experience is a little muted. And my takeaway message, what I walked away from the story was near the end when she's like, I like my life exactly as it is. I don't want to be different. I don't think other people should expect me to be different. And what's wrong with society that they can't just let me be me? And I think that is something I've been contemplating for a while now.
Yeah, I think, especially when we see her as a child, I think is the first instance when she starts to understand that she is not normal. And I mean, we're not like using that word because that's like the word that's in our lexicon to describe people. It's because that is how she is explaining the world around her, and that she sees herself as an outsider and she wants to fit this idea of normality.
So, Joey, I appreciate that you said that we, Jennifer and Joey, are not making judgments on what's normal and what's not normal. The author, in quotes, says the word normal a lot, and that is a conversation that happens with almost every character, major character in this book. They talk about behavioral norms. And so thank you for calling that out, as this is not a value judgment on our part at all. It is an analysis of the way things were presented in this very interesting cultural context as well. This is clearly a Japanese cultural moment, but as you said, Joey, it felt like it could be just about anywhere.
Yeah, it really is sort of, I mean, it's obviously in modern times because it's in a convenience store and those are pretty modern. But I think there is a timelessness to this story. And I think it'll still be relevant for a very long time because at the core of it is like human emotion. But what I was trying to say before is that she starts to identify this problem within herself, which is not really a problem. Okay. Again, this is from her perspective, from Kaiko's perspective, is because there's always someone trying to cure her of her abnormality, I guess. And it starts in or when she's young in school, because she pants her teacher, which I'm sure all the students laughed. I know I would. And she gets sent to the therapist, and they're trying to figure out, what is the thing? There is this magic piece that once we uncover it, it will uncover everything that is wrong with you, and then we'll be able to reverse the damage, in quotes there. And that is that continuously happens throughout her life, where somebody is trying to identify or pinpoint something very succinct and saying, like, if you do this, if you change this behavior, this is what will happen, instead of understanding that people are nuanced and complicated. And this reminds me of The Waves by Virginia Woolf, because in that novel, we were talking about how hard it is for Bernard, depending where you're from, how hard he discovers it is to sum up someone's entire life in words. And so I think that's a similar thing that's going on here, is that people want to be able to define who Kaiko is from a very early age, and she defies those definitions. And so it's like other male antagonists points out a lot that there's a lot of flaws, and although I don't think it's Stone Age, but yeah.
So I wanted to take us to a spot in the text where she is having an interaction with Shiraha, and I'm just going to read this very short passage. She is talking to him and says, to stay in a convenience store, you have to become a store worker. That's simple enough. You just wear a uniform and do as the manual says. And before you say anything, it was the same in the Stone Age society too. As long as you wear the skin of what's considered an ordinary person and follow the manual, you won't be driven out of the village or treated as a burden. I haven't a clue what you're talking about, he said. In other words, she says, you play a part of the fictitious creature called, in quotes, an ordinary person that everyone has in them. Just like everyone in the convenience store is playing the part of a fictitious creature called a store worker. And the reason that I bring you to this spot, Joey, is that so many times in this story, they are trying to question whether or not she has made a good choice for her life by staying at the convenience store for 18 years. And it was this moment, and several times this happened in the story, where they're making value judgments about who's worthy and who is not worthy in this society. And Shiraha is not a great dude. We'll just say that. He's very misogynistic and has some antiquated ideas and maybe not the best roommate in the world.
They're literally prehistoric ideas.
Yeah, he's doing the caveman thing and he's not great. And he gets fired from his job by being a little stalkery and inappropriate with a female customer. So again, we're just not dealing with a super emotionally evolved guy. Keiko is really such a practical person that he comes with her with a problem and she says, I know, just come live with me. You don't have a place to stay. Come live with me. It's just that simple. And she treats him like a pet. And she says those words. She's like, oh, it's now time for your feed. And like,
Yeah.
my what? And it's like, okay, are you treating me like a caged animal? And she's like, yeah, I've never had one before, and you're kind of it. And the reason I bring us back to the Stone Age and this caveman mentality is that there's a section, and I just had to laugh and was like, oh yeah, that was a great role reversal. He's debating whether he should go with her or not. It's like, oh, I've heard about this on the internet. Maybe you're trying to trick me. Like, what? And she's like, dude, you came to me saying you don't have a place to stay. I have a place for you. Like, I'm not doing anything to you right now. And she's like, oh, he's going to talk this thing to death. Okay. I just grabbed his arm and said, you're coming home with me. And she just took him. And I was like, well, that was like a caveman, a stereotypical caveman move of like, somebody's just got to grab you by the hair and take you home, because if you just sit around thinking about it, we'll never get there. So I thought there was a bit of levity and playfulness, which I think in the description we read of the author, she does a lot with gender norms and the things that we attribute to certain identities as being appropriate or inappropriate. So I just thought that was really playful, but I love that she really does refer to him as her pet.
Yeah, it's a weird, it's like an uncomfortable scenario that they're in, but like it's like a marriage of convenience that he's inconvenienced by, even though he has like the most convenience. Yeah, it's really a fascinating relationship dynamic that she created there. And I mean, even though he's deplorable and he is just like so infuriating, you're like, oh my God, I wish I could punch you in the face.
Joey, did you have a moment in the story? Did you have one little moment that I had where her sister comes into town and she is in their apartment and she sees that he is like in the bathroom because he has set up shop in the bathtub? He's like, you know what?
Yeah.
This is my room now. Nobody's using the bathroom for bathroom stuff. I am making my own little fortress. And he overhears what her sister's, talking about relationship things. And he comes out with this beautiful, on the spot, elaborate lie that makes it look like they're having this great relationship. And she does the same thing for him in another context. I thought, maybe you guys are like gonna like be in love. Like maybe this is like selflessness. And it's like, oh, Jennifer, you're so naive. Like, get a clue. So Joey, I just wanted to know if you had any inklings of that, or if that was totally my highest and best hope for them, that they would magically be in love.
I don't think so, only because when I first read this in 2020, I wasn't like super aware of any tropes or anything. This is not a romance, obviously, but you're not wrong in thinking like, oh, this could be like an enemies to lovers kind of romantic trope, because it's setting itself up to be that, but she subverts the trope and doesn't give us that. So it's an if you're looking for a romance, it would be an unsatisfying ending, which again, I really love that. I don't typically read a lot of romance. It's just not for me. I do read it once in a while, but it's not my go-to genre. But I really love that she kept that, she highly kept that in mind when she was reading this. I don't know how she went. And I think that was, to me, it was the point that she was trying to convince us that this was going to be that enemies to lovers trope. And it absolutely was not. And I just want to read one quote from him, from Shiraha, because he really seems like the worst, and he is. Okay, but he's also saying what everyone is not saying, because they're all tiptoeing around it and saying things in a very passive-aggressive way. Instead of, he's just saying it out loud. And I'm not saying that's an admirable thing. It's not. He should still shut his mouth about it. But he is illuminating what everyone else is saying. And I think in the end that Kaiko actually appreciates his honesty, because she appreciates that in other characters throughout the story when they're like, it's his sister-in-law that's like, don't have kids. Don't pass on your genes. Like, you two are a mess. Like, no, don't do that to the world. And she's like, got it. I'm not going to pass on my genes. I'll make sure I take them all with me when I die. But he says, and this is on page 105 of this edition, he is talking to Kaiko, and he says, you need to wake up, Furakura. To put it bluntly, you're the lowest of the low. Your womb is probably too old to be of any use, and you don't even have the looks to serve as a means to satisfy carnal desire. But then neither are you earning money like a man. Far from it. You're only working part-time without even a proper job. Frankly speaking, you're just a burden on the village, the dregs of society. And even though that is extremely harsh and very blunt and uncalled for, especially when he's staying in her house for free, that's what everyone else is trying to get at. And I think he puts it so succinctly there that this is the view that she didn't understand. This was how people were viewing her, and she did not get that. She knew that people were, asking her invasive questions about when's she going to get married, when's she going to get a better job, when is she going to have kids, when's she going to move out into a house, and like the things that you're supposed to do. But no one ever says any of these things out loud to her. So if anything, that's his one redeeming quality, I guess, is that he was at least honest.
His bluntness made it clear to her there was not subtext. He was being very clear. And Joey, there was a part in the novella that really struck the wrong chord for me. And the other store workers were talking about the boyfriend, the disgruntled worker that had been shunned. He's out of the society, and like, yeah, it would be better for everybody if he just dropped dead. Yeah, it would be. And I was like, what? Like, you can be a bad worker and kind of a bad citizen and a bad conversationalist, but I think you still have a right to exist on the planet. So it just felt very, very interesting that the author chose to put that in there in such stark, direct terms and had more than one character state that, agree with that, say, that's right. And the point that you just brought out where the sister-in-law said, you guys should not reproduce. This is a horrible idea. Keep your genes to yourself. To me, raised a lot of ethical questions that I think over the last 6 or 8 years as a society we've been asking ourselves, who has the right to exist? What does that do to society when certain segments of the population are systematically chosen over others to be able to?
That's eugenics.
Yeah, I was like, I think it's not a new thing. I think it's not a new thing. I think there are more technological advancements to allow people to, perhaps do some screening of embryos and, very early pregnancy things that can weed out what a couple might find as an undesirable trait. And that I've read about that in the news. I've sort of thought about it, but thinking about it in the context of the story, it gave a whole new light that it's like, but what if does she have the right to perpetuate herself should she choose to want to do that? And something that was interesting about the story as well is that she said every 2 weeks, like the water in her body was exchanged for new water. Like she had this continual evolution. And I really appreciated the beauty of thinking that even though you're the same, you're ostensibly the same person, you are literally not the same person you were yesterday because your cells are different. Things have happened to you. And I just really love the playfulness of her talking about time, consistency, what changes, what doesn't change. I thought it was just really artfully done.
Yeah, I want to read that quote because that was something that stuck out to me because I was like, wow, I love this explanation of this. So on page 32, she says, after all, I absorb the world around me, and that's changing all the time. Just as all the water that was in my body the last time we met has now been replaced with new water, the things that make me up have changed too. And I thought, like, that's super true. And because there's this thing that happens with Kaiko that she adopts different aspects of people's, not personalities, but affectations, I would say, in how they emote and their tone so that she can, so she can continue masking correctly to her. And so her personality and her mannerisms and all of that have to continuously change because the people who are surrounding her are constantly changing. So I just really love, like, it made me think, like, is that something that I do as someone that is neurotypical? Is that something that I do? Do I pick up on other things? And I absolutely do. Okay, oddly enough, I will adopt people's the way that the sound of their laugh. It's really strange. The sound of my laugh has changed over my lifetime because if I spend a lot of time with people, it will sound like their laugh oddly enough, much to my disdain, because I do not like that I do that, but I cannot help it. But I just thought, like, this is really normalizing this behavior, that this is not an odd thing to constantly evolve as a human. You don't have to take on aspects of people to try and mask your typical emotions that you would have. But it's true that we are constantly changing, and it totally depends on who we surround ourselves with. I mean, if you hang out with garbage, then you start to stink, you know? So that makes sense.
Joey, I love that. And it's like, yes, in addition to that popular point of view, it's also in the scientific literature. I think they say that, the top 5 or the top 10 people that you spend the most time with has the most influence over your life. So love your laugh. So whoever is helping you evolve that, thank you so much, because we do hear that. But I think my speech patterns have been affected by the way in which you and I communicate. My speech patterns have changed as a result of our conversations and the things that I now ask about. I'm like, we should talk about consent. Oh, this is how this should be. These are the words that we should use to describe these circumstances, and not the old words that I used to use that are no longer effective or appropriate. And I think that was really well done in the story from the standpoint that she gives out breakdown. I think it was like 3 or 4 different people. She's like, I'm 32% this person, or a certain percentage of this person, and a certain percentage of this person, and then all the remaining parts of me are a little bit of everyone else. And I really appreciated the thought experiment for myself. I'm like, wow, if I was breaking down the influencers in my life, the people that are important to me and have helped shaped my worldview and my personality, who would those people be? And I really thought that was, as in almost every part of this novel, it's a huge thought experiment for those who want to go down that path. It's like, who decides who is worthy? Who decides if having a job that doesn't take you to the corporate C-suite, is that a waste of your life? It's like, I just keep going back to her comment near the end. She's like, I liked my life. I did not want to change my life. Everyone else needed my life to change, but I found peace and solace and meaning, and she was great at her job. She rocked it. And I really appreciated the author just asking us to question our own judgments about, why are we getting in other people's business about what they should and should not be doing when it comes to their own happiness.
Yeah, I think this book is maybe even more relevant than when maybe in 2016 or 2018, because there is more discussion online about like millennials and Gen Z not caring about moving up the corporate ladder and being like, I don't want any of that. That's you guys all look miserable. I don't want it. There's no amount of money. I'd rather be happy than miserable. And so I think that's what's happening here. She's like, I enjoy working as a part-time convenience store worker, and I enjoy it. It brings me peace. Again, like you said in the beginning, there's a manual, there is a strict code of conduct that she can say like, oh God, finally, like now I know this is comfortable for me. I can learn this rule book and like rely on it and say like, okay, this is how I react to this situation. This is an inappropriate reaction based on this SOP, your standard of procedures. So I really appreciate that there is this exploration of like, I don't want to have like this really important job where I make a ton of money, because that's not important to me. When I go to sleep, what motivates me to wake back up is like that I enjoy what I'm doing. And it's so much of her life is dedicated to working in this convenience store. And she's been through 8 managers, because of course she numbers them. And so she's had discussions with each of them to try and get her to understand like how to be the most perfect employee that she can be. And so one of those things is how getting enough sleep and enough food to eat. And she just uses it as fuel at food, which I'm like, I don't get that. I love eating. So I want to enjoy what I'm eating. But she just like eats boiled vegetables and rice and just like a very simple diet, only because it helps her be a better worker. So I don't get that. I don't love working like that, but I appreciate that that was something that she was like, no, I don't want more than I have now. I'm actually content right now.
Joey, I appreciate that you took us to that scene, because what that brought up for me is, yes, her manager said, we pay you a salary to allow you to live in a house, to be well fed, to have good sleep, and to be clean when you show up. And I was like, yes, thank you very much for paying me a living wage so I can actually show up as a
Yeah.
fully realized human being to my job. What was also interesting, they talk a lot about motherhood in this story, or about creating a family. There's a woman who is married and has a baby, who is in her friend group, and she's very into being a mom. And her sister also has a small child, and she said when she saw her sister without her child, she's like, it was like something was missing. Like she literally couldn't see her sister anymore without the baby. And then they had a third friend who married, but she said she was letting nature take its course, but it wasn't happening, and she had some distress about that. Now, the reason I say that, Joey, is that it occurred to me when I was reading the story, right from the get-go, literally on the first page, she talks about having this innate intuition about what customers are going to need from her. To me, in the same way that a mother knows what her child needs to get from her just by how they sound, how they smell, what they're acting, do they pull at their ear, like are they about to have a tantrum? She just knew what the customers needed from her, and what I thought was a very intuitive sense. Nobody told her when somebody shakes their coins in their pocket, they're probably a smoker, because those people generally pay for their cigarettes with coins in the society. I just thought, for a person who, as portrayed of not having a lot of emotional highs and lows, she seems very even keeled. It is not because she is inattentive. It is not because she is not skilled. And it is not because she does not have this extremely, extremely good sense of observation and intuition of what people wanted. So I just really love that that was called out, that yes, anyone can be a quote unquote convenience store worker. I'm going to call him a punk. I don't know what else to call him. This young guy comes in. He's like, yeah, I know how to do my job. And she's like, this is a serious job. He's like, yeah, right. It's like a loser job. Like, I can't even believe I have to take this job. And she's like, get out of here. Like, you're not going to last. Like, enough. And bringing into mind that there are people who work in jobs that other people consider not a high status jobs that are killing it. They are just doing such a great job because their unique combination of skills make that the best possible combination of their expression of themselves. And I just love that those undercurrents are definitely in this story. She's like, I tried to get a better job. I went to the interview. I'm like, I don't even want this job. Like, I just want to go back to where I was. And why isn't that enough?
Yeah, I love how we're exploring that throughout this whole novel or novella, that it's just, we want her to just admit, like, this is what you want to do. Who cares? Who cares that everybody else doesn't want that for you? They're not nice to you. Just let them go. Like, just give it up. Who cares? Don't be normal. Normal is boring anyway. So just, you want to be that. And I think there is also the conversation of the expectation that is specifically for women to have or to get married and have children, and to be a homemaker, which is totally fine if someone wants to do that. You know, not yucking your yum. Do it if you want, okay? But she doesn't want to. And I think Kaiko in the story is an asexual character. She has no desire to have sex, and she's never had it. So, and that's also something that is very hard for people, including myself. Not that I'm denying that asexual people exist. That's what I'm saying. It's hard for me to imagine living a life where I don't feel sexual urges. And I think that's true for probably most sexual people, whether you're homosexual, heterosexual, blah, blah, blah. And so this is something else, that there's a cognitive dissonance with the people that she's surrounded herself with, because they're like, I don't get that. What do you mean you don't want to have sex with someone? Like, of course you do. And she's like, I really don't. I don't want to have sex.
And Joey, it's not even explicit that they are asking her about if she wants to be sexual or not. They're making assumptions that she's suffering because she is not.
Yeah.
And she was really ticked off and annoyed. She's like, why are you taking your lens and applying it to me? I don't know what I'm missing, because I don't miss it, because this is not for me. And I think you and I have had this conversation before in other podcasts that, you know, sexuality is an important part of our life experience. And I think it's difficult for people who see somebody who doesn't have that same setup to be like, wait, what? It's like, no, you're lying. That can't be true. That's not how the world works. I'm like, let me just tell you my experience, right? And I think there's so much of that percolating in the story of trying to point out the less than helpful, but they think they're helpful people who are like, oh my gosh, you have a boyfriend? This is so great. He's wonderful. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you have a boyfriend. She's like, you know, he's the loser guy you just fired and everybody hates, right? And they're like, oh, well, that's okay because at least it's a man. And like, now you have one. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, people, is that really, you just check the box, has mate, check. I'm like, he's bad. She's so much better off on her own. And Joey, so that was the part of me that was like, oh, it's going to be a love story. Like they're going to redeem each other. They're going to have this moment where they're going to just be like, oh, now I get it. Like it's so great to have somebody to depend upon, because that occurred to me. As you know, I am a new pet parent. And so now I have a little creature that is dependent on me for sustenance and love and care. And when she had him in the bathtub and referred to him as a pet, and she's like, oh, I'm going to take on extra shifts because I need to buy food for him. I'm like, oh, wow, it is like having a pet. So I thought she was going to fall in love with him and kind of realize like she enjoyed taking care of something. That did not happen. And for all the reasons that you stated, like, thank goodness it did not happen. But yeah, I was very optimistic that she would find a way to find love. And in the end, she did. She found the love of herself and she found the love of her job. And this, I'll leave it at this, Joey. It felt very much from the moment we started this story about fate. She said, I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I got off at a subway station. I looked around. There was nobody around. And I saw a sign that said, convenience store now opening. She gets the job and she stays there for half her life. She's 36. She started at 18. And when her difficult, misogynistic boyfriend tells her, no, you are gonna be the breadwinner. You're gonna go make us some money because obviously I'm not gonna work, was his point of view. He has to go to the bathroom. So he's like, oh, I'll be right back. I'm going to go in this convenience store. She goes into the convenience store. And as she said, she was reborn. She was like, yeah, I am supposed to be here. Everything went click, 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 click. And she just slid right back into her old way of being and was just filled with this joy. And we're like, yes, they better hire her.
Yeah. It is a good ending. I wish we got a little bit more just so we could see her back in like uniform and like fully relaxed again. But I mean, that's obviously where it was headed. But I think what you were saying before was there is this need for when people identify something in her that is not something that they're anticipating, that there is this need for them to fix it. They have to fix everything about her to like better her life, even though she's like, my life's great. I love it. And I have literally no complaints. So, and so everything is she's trying to hide the fact that she is happy to make other people happy. And so like when she has a fake boyfriend, even though he is not nice and straight up says that he just wants to use her, and I'll read that quote really quick because I thought like, oh my God, I can imagine someone saying this. He says on page 123, I always did want revenge on women who are allowed to become parasites just because they're women. I always thought to myself that I'd be a parasite one day. That'll show them. And I'm going to be a parasite on you for Akura, whatever it takes. I'm just like, ugh, you're despicable.
He was definitely despicable, Joey. I definitely have to give that to you. But I wanted to go back to something really quickly that you just said. She didn't have any complaints. Mm-hmm. It was the people in her life, in her broader life, would say, oh, wait, no, you definitely need a boyfriend. You definitely need better clothes. You definitely need a career path. And she's like, I didn't say I have any complaints. And I think that is just a really interesting way to view the world. I was speaking to my brother who seems to complain a lot. And I was like, well, why don't we do something different about your life? And he's like, sister, I actually like my life. And I was like, well, that's good news. Then stop the complaining. So, Joey, I think that just hit a note for me of a person who's completely content with their life, which in this novella, that character definitely seemed that she was very at peace with the life that she had, even though she was working very hard. And she was, in my mind, the way this was written, providing a very important public service, because she talks about the way that she can anticipate the needs, she can be efficient, the city can work around her. She has one older woman with a walking stick who would come to the store every day and get her food because they said that it was hard for that woman to walk a long distance. And so I really needed for myself to kind of reconsider the essential services that people are giving in this story and what is valued and what is just thrown away.
Yeah, I just wanted to be her friend and be like, no, don't listen to these fools. You can do whatever you want. If you love working here, you should work here for as long as you want. And if you don't want to have sex and you don't want to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or another or a partner of some kind, don't do it. It's not worth it. You're already so happy. So many people would that's what everyone is in pursuit of, is happiness. And she very simply got it. And it's it feels very natural for her. And I think everyone else in this story, and probably in real life, is really trying their best. Everything they do is to try to improve their life so that they can be happy one day. Or at least that's the sort of mentality, is that if I get this job, then I'll be happy. But then you get the job and you're like, well, once I get promoted, then I'll be happier. And once I get this car, then I'll be happy. Blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I don't need to keep moving the goalpost here. I'm loving it now. It's fun. It's a great time. So I just really appreciate that she has such what we consider a simplistic life. And that's perfectly fine for her. That is the goal. That was the goal the whole time, was just to do this. So great job.
Yeah, Joey, thank you. I think that's a perfect place for us to wrap this conversation up. She had a deep appreciation and gratitude for the life that she created for herself. And it's like, you win. I don't know what prizes we're handing out here, but I think that sounds like a successful life by anyone's measure. Do you use your talents and skills in a way that brings you joy and is a benefit to other people? Yes, she does. And so you go back to that convenience store woman and knock them dead. But not truly knock them dead, because the last time somebody said that to her, she actually hit him with a shovel. So she won't do that.
So she knows she shouldn't do that. Next week, we're going to be reading 3 Drops of Blood by Sadegh Hedayat. It's from a short story collection published in 1932. And was written before his most famous work, which I believe is The Blind Owl, which we do also want to read. He is an Iranian author as well. So as we said in our June wrap-up, we haven't really reviewed or discussed any Middle Eastern short stories or authors. So it'll be very exciting to get a new part of the globe on our list of stories we've read.
Joey, I am really looking forward to that. And thank you for bringing us yet another cultural snapshot through the story that we read today and the one that we'll read next week.